Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for clicking on this video. I'll tell you right up front what the purpose of the video is so that you can either choose to hang in with us or choose to step away. The one thing I would caution you, though, if you decide to step away, please remember that this issue could affect you at any point in your life going forward tomorrow. So at least listen in for a few seconds. So the intent of this video is to talk about the Senate bill here in New Hampshire that we have going forward that'll be presented to the Senate Health Committee in January of the upcoming year. My name is Bill Murphy. I am a longtime pain patient advocate in New Hampshire. I am a member of the New Hampshire Pain Collaborative, which is a small team of people made up of patient advocates, the head of a leading and very large pain patient support group, and a longtime leading pain management physician and published author here in New Hampshire. We came together through our shared advocating experiences and decided that we together could hopefully do something about the current situation, which is causing for a lot of restrictions being put on the treatment of chronic pain, the chronic illness with resulting pain, and the physicians who provide that treatment. We kept our group small on purpose. We wanted to involve the right people, people who had experience in this area, people who were dedicated and committed to hanging in for the long term, but not so many people that we lost focus. So we kept the group small for that reason, and so far it's proven to be effective. We had many goals at the outset, but the initial goal, and the goal I'll speak about today, is to propose and hopefully have legislation passed that will provide physicians who treat chronic pain patients, even when that treatment requires the use of opioid analgesics, with certain protections for providing that treatment when they do provide that treatment. So I've had a lot of physicians express concerns about what they deem could be the restricting of the practice of medicine through legislation. And I just want to explain that that is the furthest thing from our intent. And we don't believe is what is accomplished within the language of our bill. First of all, our bill is, again, it's New Hampshire. It's Senate Bill 546, and the bill is sponsored by Senator John Reagan. And again, the title is Treatment of Chronic Pain. The focus of our bill and the intent of our bill and the language within is to help physicians, not restrict them, but help them to provide the treatment that they deem is medically necessary on a patient-by-patient basis without fear of reprimand by either the Board of Medicine or the DEA. Now, helping along those lines in terms of eliminating or limiting the exposure with the Board of Medicine, we feel we can accomplish that. When it comes to the DEA, I mean, who knows, right? That's a federal organization, and we just don't know to what extent we can affect that. But in a nutshell, that's the purpose of this bill. New Hampshire Senate Bill 546, Treatment of Chronic Pain. I'll provide a link in the below the video so that you folks can pull the bill up and read through it. It's only 2 pages long. There's 3 really. The first page is a cover page, but the language is contained within 2 pages. So I would encourage you all to please read through it. It starts off by defining what chronic pain is. I'll let you know up front that we stayed away from using the word intractable because we have found that from person to person, the definition of intractable is different. It changes. And in a lot of cases, using the word intractable excludes patients who should be included. So our title is chronic pain. We break down within that what chronic pain is. So it includes intractable, but it's not limited to intractable. And I'll just go over it briefly. So chronic pain means a state in which pain persists beyond the usual course of an acute disease or healing of an injury, or that might or might not be associated with an acute or chronic pathologic process that causes continuous or intermittent pain over months or years. So again, back to the idea of chronic pain, we're not saying that chronic pain is something that, and for a lot of people it is, but it's not always something that affects a person every moment of every day of their life. So beneath this, we break it down a bit. The first thing we do is we exclude the typical statement that says for non-cancer treatment, non-cancer pain treatment. So many people in the past have always looked upon cancer pain as the most extreme pain a patient can suffer from. And I'm not minimizing that pain, that experience at all. But we also know there are illnesses out there that can cause pain just as great and even greater than cancer pain. So we remove that by saying the above paragraph, for the purpose of this subdivision, chronic pain does not cover or in any way determine treatment for pain from terminal disease, not just cancer terminal disease, just terminal disease in general. So part of the reason we addressed that was we didn't want to get into the space of hospice and palliative care and accidentally defining for them what their treatment of their patients should be or should be limited to. We didn't want to touch upon that at all. But we also did not want to limit it to cancer pain from terminal illness. And then the second section, which really gets into the definition of chronic pain, for the purpose of this subdivision, chronic pain includes, but may not be limited to, pain defined as chronic, intractable, high impact, chronic episodic, and chronic relapsing. So again, we acknowledge, and we would hope that everyone does, that a chronic illness and pain can be something that happens, that accompanies the illness several days a week. I mean, parts of days in every week. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that is there every moment of every day, 7 days a week. So that's our definition of chronic pain. So we hope that we've achieved the goal of being very inclusive of various chronic illnesses and associated pain. So with that, again, understanding our goal is to provide, because here's my experience in advocating for patients. When I say advocating for patients, in my case, what I do is I literally accompany a patient to their doctor's office with them and speak with the doctor, listen to the doctor, try to negotiate some form of compromise with the patient and doctor as to appropriate treatment for the patient, so that we don't get into a conversation about, I'm cutting you off, that's it, you're done, unless the patient has violated, their pain contract in some way. But if there's been no violations, if there's nothing other than the physician's fear of reprimand, which is a real fear, or the practice that physician works for forcing decisions on that physician. If that's what we're dealing with, my goal has always been to try to work to some compromise to allow for that patient to have their pain addressed and have the physician feel comfortable knowing that they understood what exists in New Hampshire in terms of law or regulation, and that they are not exposed by providing the treatment they're providing. Even with that, so through my experiences, I've had physician after physician after physician tell me that unless you can point to some law on the books in New Hampshire that tells me I can determine for my patient on a patient-by-patient basis what is medically necessary in terms of treatment, that I can provide that treatment and not be exposed to reprimand, then I'm doing what my practice tells me to do, or I'm going to act based on my concerns about reprimand by the Board of Medicine or the DEA, and I'm going to limit treatment. I'm going to cut off treatment. I'm just going to avoid treatment altogether when it comes to especially opioid analgesics. So that's the reason we focused on this legislation first. We had a senator sign up to sponsor the legislation first for us. We wrote the language for the bill using a few other sources and our own input and knowledge. The bill, there's iterations of that process. The bill then goes to the bill writers, who also do research of existing law and existing regulation. They put in all the appropriate references. They do the formatting so that it's in the format of a bill, a legal bill. And that is what we now have, Senate Bill 546. So we're at the point of the bill is going to go in January before the Senate Health Committee. So the bill as written will be presented before the Senate Health Committee in January. Now, if you have input that you think could help us make a better bill or get our bill passed, feel free. I'll put my email address in the within the information below this video. Send me an email, provide me any input you want. Where we can use your input, we will try to do so, because the bill can and will likely be amended once it hits the health committee and then beyond in the process. I will tell you that right now we have met with members of the Medical Society, New Hampshire Medical Society. We have presented before the New Hampshire Medical Society's Legislative Committee. We have spoken with members of the Board of Pharmacy, certain members of the Board of Medicine. We have formal presentations, basically working discussions scheduled with the Board of Pharmacy and the Board of Medicine in early January. And we have feedback from our sponsoring state senator, John Reagan. All of this information tells us that we have support right now for this legislation. In New Hampshire, I mean, many people, many physicians understand that the backlash against chronic pain patients and the treatment of chronic pain patients and the physicians who treat them because of the addiction and overdose issues has gone too far, and that we need to address this and right that wrong. So we're finding that we're getting good support. We have people that are saying, this is something we've been thinking about. It needs to be done. We're glad you're doing it. We support it. And I'm talking, medical directors, leading physicians within pain management organizations, leading members of the state Senate, the state House, the House of Representatives. We're finding a lot of support. Now, we're not naive. We're going to run into roadblocks. We're going to run into people who are just very negative on this subject, people who may have been affected by family members, friends, with addiction and overdose. I mean, just a whole bunch of issues out there. We're going to run into that. We're not looking for an argument. We're looking for a discussion. We're looking to talk with people to try to explain to them that we support the fight against addiction and overdose, and we support the funding of treatments and facilities for folks who suffer with addiction issues. But we're looking to eliminate, not just limit, but eliminate the backlash and restrictions being placed on legitimate pain patients, people who are suffering in pain, who do not abuse, who do not divert, who have not violated the pain contract, who do nothing but seek some level of quality life, and harm no one. So we're trying to convince people out there, especially people who have the vote, that by restricting access from pain medication for a pain patient, you are not helping to address the addiction and overdose issues in any state, in New Hampshire, or across the country. The two are not the same. So again, now, a lot of physicians, patients, advocates have asked me, how do I help? Well, if you're not a resident of New Hampshire, that's kind of tough. But if you're a physician and you're interested in providing testimony, that would be awesome. We don't have dates yet for when the health committee will meet or when we'll need people to provide testimony. But as soon as we have those dates, I'll try to get that back out to everyone. But if you're a physician who's interested in providing testimony in person, that would be awesome. We've already had a couple step forward. If you can't do that, which is understandable, if you are interested in providing testimony via written explanation, that would be great as well. You can message me. I'll have my email address in the video. If you're simply looking for other ways to help, if you're a resident of New Hampshire, even if you're not a resident of New Hampshire, anyone, if you know of people in New Hampshire, relatives, friends, anyone, if you could please reach out to them and ask them to call and write their state reps and their state senators. Ask them to explain just briefly, but in their own words, that they support Senate Bill 546 for the treatment of chronic pain. The more state reps and state senators we can get to hear from constituents, or even from folks out of state who support this bill, and to get them to support this bill, the better off we're going to be. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. We would really appreciate it. The other thing we're going to need from New Hampshire residents especially, but if you're in the local area, the greater New Hampshire area, when it comes time for us to need human beings, bodies, people in front of the House to either speak or just to show numbers, that would be awesome. Again, I don't have dates, so it's hard for me to ask you to commit. But if you can at least keep that in mind, that sometime in January, February, that's what we'll need. If you could do that for us, that would be awesome. Here's the big thing. In my view, any state that passes legislation such as ours is a huge step forward and can then be carried forward in other states, not as written as it is in New Hampshire. Every state needs to be looked at on a state-by-state basis. The laws and the regulations and the restrictive environment that exists in every state is different from state to state. What might be applicable and beneficial for one state may actually be hurtful for another state. So it's not as simple as just picking up someone else's bill and saying, here you go, in another state, this is what we want. It can be used as maybe a starting point, but it's definitely not the end game for you folks. But the fact that if it passes in one state, that alone can be used as motivation for reps and senators in another state to view your legislation more seriously and to be more positive about their decisions relative to voting on that legislation. So that's basically it in a nutshell. It's New Hampshire. It's Senate Bill 546. The focus is not on legislating restrictions on the practice of medicine. It's to support physicians having freedom to make their own decisions about treatment in these cases, and providing you with something in terms of statutory law that you can point at that says that piece of legislation tells me that I can treat this patient as I deem medically necessary, not needing to adhere to predetermined arbitrary guidelines about how medicine should be practiced. So if you can get on board with that, we would appreciate it. Again, send me an email if you have any supportive comments, questions, concerns, input. We'll take it all. And I promise you, every email will be read. I may not get back to everyone, but they will be read and they will be used and incorporated where we can, where it makes sense. So for those who hung in and listened, I thank you. Reach out to me for anything. If I can help you with something you have going on in your state, also feel free to reach out to me. Whatever I can do, I'll do. We all need to work together on this stuff. It's the only way it's going to get done. By the way, one other thing. So the small group we formed to get this done, 3 of us are pain patients. The reason you have a group and not a person is because not everybody will be able to be there all the time, because of the nature of the beast. We're sick. So the way it works is when one person has a night where they can't be there and needs to step away, the others are there for them. So you work together as a team. You acknowledge that some folks aren't always going to be there, and when they can't be, you're there. When you can't be, they're there. So it's the only way to get things done. It's chronic pain patients working together, which, to be honest with you, in a lot of cases, is kind of a challenge, especially when you talk about groups of chronic pain patients. But that's all history. From my perspective, history. We don't need to go there. We need to work together going forward. So again, I thank you for taking the time to listen. Please remember it's New Hampshire Senate Bill 546 for the treatment of chronic pain, supporting physicians and their freedom to determine treatment based on what they deem to be medically necessary. That's it. Thank you all. Have a good night. Bye.